Hello and welcome. It's wonderful to have so many people join us for our fourth webcast in the Women in Technology series. The reaction to the first three have been incredible and created huge amounts of engagement. So we're delighted to follow on with this fourth webcast. Just a quick intro. My name is Richard Parker. I'm a partner at EY, leading on leadership and culture across financial services, and had a previous career working in elite sport across 9 Olympics and Paralympics. But probably more importantly for this, I've been led by and hopefully an ally for many fantastic women leaders throughout my career. And today we're going to explore the topic of championing and empowering progressive women to help them thrive in the technology field. We'll hear about real experiences of women in technology and discuss how we can improve representation of females in technology across all levels. It's a huge privilege to be hosting what's lined up to be a huge, insightful and eye-opening set of questions with a fantastic panel. And a guest will discuss women in technology driving their own career, breaking down barriers to make women in technology successful, championing women in technology, and enabling successful women in technology. And it was interesting to learn in recent studies that the big tech companies itself, women make up barely over a third of the workforce. And another issue is around visibility. Women are often tasked with invisible work, such as day-to-day tasks that maintain the status quo and get credit for being diligent but not strategic. What's more, in a McKinsey study, we noted that gender disparity can emerge as early as the first promotion opportunity. So women account for 48% of entry-level hires, but only 38% of first-level managers. Another report that women of colour only make up 4% of the computing workforce, and almost no senior leadership roles, despite making up 16% of the general population. Numerous studies have shown that diversity at the workplace not only improves the work culture, but has a direct impact on the profitability and productivity of a company. So it made me think, how is it possible that there are millions of women around the world that are on the fringe of the workforce, even if their contributions and capabilities are vital? What can be done to close the gender gap as soon as possible? As with previous sessions, our intention is not to drive a policy debate here, but rather share a range of real-world experiences and personal views from a range of talented leaders in their field. Progressive women in technology workplace need to be empowered thanks to a wider industry awareness and to a concrete action. To address gender inequality, businesses need to embed diversity and inclusion into company culture from day one. One way businesses can do this is by hiring female leaders early in their reception. It's important that women see other women in senior roles because it shows that an organization values diversity. So let's set up today's discussion and introduce our fabulous panel. Four incredible leaders that I want to introduce you to. So firstly, introduce Lynne von Wistinghausen, Managing Director, leading operations and technology function in Continental Europe in Marsh. Lynne has accountability for a team of more than 1,500 colleagues, leading development and implementation of strategies critical to achieving operational excellence and driving profitable revenue growth. She brings more than 25 years of experience in the insurance industry and a variety of tech sectors. Lynne's a passionate and inclusive leader who understands how every colleague can contribute to company-wide transformation. She combines strong technical skills and knowledge with a deep understanding of change management and organizational behavior. Then we have Kanika Seth, EY EMEIA FSO Consulting Cybersecurity Leader, with more than 20 years experience in delivering cybersecurity engagements and working closely with regulators to provide thought leadership and market insights to the industry. She has significant experience in working with boards and executive committees, bringing deep expertise in evolving cybersecurity regulatory expectations. Kanika is also accountable for a number of EY diversity, inclusion, and inclusiveness initiatives, including several women in technology initiatives. She's very passionate about de&i and works with multiple local charities and non-profit organizations, which target the causes of inequality and help people from diverse backgrounds develop their skills and confidence to enhance employability. Our third panelist is Ricarda. the Program Director, Romo Transformation, from the COO management team at General Insurance. Responsible for the Program Romo for the transformation of the life and non-life business. With over 25 years experience, either provider of insurance software or insurance companies, which is a rich experience in development, rollout, and integration of insurance software and maintenance-related packages. During her career, Ricarda has extensively led teams in multicultural environments and a proven track record in people transformation programs. And finally, Sarah Schmidt, Sales Director Insurance SAP, leading the transformation to cloud and digitization with insurance customers in Germany, managing change in employee behavior, mindset, and skill. Sarah started her professional career in the technology industry in 2011 with IBM, focusing on sales, lastly leading the IBM AI sales business for EMEIA. Sarah is a passionate, pragmatic, and empathetic leader with advanced experience in building market-resonating strategies, in pragmatic and in value-based selling to clients, and in building, transforming, and leading large, diverse, intercultural sales teams. That's quite a panel. So what we're going to do is focus on personal experience and insights into how to empower progressive women in technology, and then move on to the organizational questions. But we'd love you as the audience to help me drive this. So if you do have any questions, please pose them in the chat box, and I'll try and pick up as many as we possibly can. But that's enough intro for me. Let's get on to the really important people, and that's the panel. So, Lynne, you're consistently being recognized for the great work and change that you lead across the globe. I'm really interested in what helped you develop your brand in the IT world.
Thanks, Richard, and thank you for including me in this great panel today. I'm very honored to be here and to share my experiences. So I have to be honest with you, building a brand, I think, is a lifetime worth of work. So I'm happy to share with you how I'm continuing to build it. So one of the first things I think I started to do when I started my career is right away I started to build credibility by real life experiences. And I was pretty lucky when I started my career. I started at Chubb Insurance Company of Canada. They got me involved right away, and I'm going to show my age here in a second, in a voicemail initiative. They had never had voicemail in the company, and they gave me this project, and I was nervous. And I thought, but what a great experience. You know, I don't know anything about doing this, but I get to work with a vendor. I get to learn all of this. And off I went, and I got coaching along the way, and I was able to deliver it on time. And I got to meet a vendor and had all these great experiences. So I really had to start building credibility. And then as I started getting more confidence and showing that I could deliver, the company started to give me more and more projects. So then I ended up having an end-to-end fiduciary implementation and then a claims implementation. And then that really started to get me going. And then one final story, we had an internal audit, and it came back quite not very good. We had a very big disaster recovery gap, and the company asked me to get involved. And instead of saying, no, I don't know anything about disaster recovery, I said yes. And then I went and bought a book. It was the most boring book I'd ever read in my life. And I helped the company put together a disaster recovery plan. And so from all of those stories I just told you, what it helped me do is start to know the environment, learn trends of my industry, really gain firsthand experience. And then as I was gaining all this firsthand experience, I was building a network. I was collaborating. I was building peers. I was meeting vendors. I was getting to know new partners to work with. And once you start to do that, you really create and you start to create a brand for yourself in your industry that you work on. And then I started to realize and create goals for myself to say, now I want to join conferences and I want to be part of learning what's going on outside, even outside of my industry. And then as I got to meet more people and develop more of a network, they actually started to ask me to speak at events. And, honestly, it was a little bit nerve-wracking. And sometimes I thought, I have enough work as it is, but you have to say yes to these opportunities so that you can continue to build your brand and develop your reputation as a leader.
I love those stories. And what's interesting is you said you were nervous twice in that story. And so what was it that enabled you to say, okay, I am going to do it. I'm going to move forward?
Yeah, I think to build a career, you have to be a little bit of a risk taker and actually get out of your comfort zone. If you're always in your comfort zone, you won't grow as an individual and start feeling confident that you can do more. You can do these other things. And I think the most exciting times in my career is when I get that pit in my stomach and I start to think, oh, this is a little scary. And then I think, yes, I must do this.
Yeah, and were there people that maybe along the way that helped you? Talked about getting some coaching and reading books. What helped you?
Yeah. So, I had a great mentor for many years in my career. It was as a boss I had. And then I also had a great CEO that I worked with that really gave me a platform to stand on and continued to believe in my ability to deliver. And, every year I was taking, whether it was a course, standardizing processes or something in that, learning something that of the up and coming new technologies or how to lead people. It was always in my personal development that I took quite seriously. And then some years when the company wasn't investing in that, I bought books, and read them to keep up onto trends.
Wonderful. Thank you. Let me bring Kanika into the conversation. So I know you're a real driving force on this a particular topic. So I'm interested in how you're driving the necessary change in technology for women to succeed, and maybe what's helped you through this.
No, thank you very much, and it's absolutely great to be here. So, firstly, thank you for having me on, as well. I mean, driving change is the big words, aren't they? In terms of what we're looking to do in technology. I mean, look, there's a lot that we do as an industry. There's a lot we do across the market, but of course, there's also a recognition of how much more we should be doing in this space. The numbers speak for themselves as well, and we don't see enough women in leadership positions in technology. Fundamentally, we don't see enough women even joining at the sort of graduate level, and that's the one thing I struggle with a little bit, which is how do we actually showcase that? How do we actually build a brand where the next generation is excited by technology? I mean, the war for technology, the talent war out there, specifically in the technology space, it's opening up huge opportunities, for women, and across every single market, every single industry. I'm not even just talking about financial services. And traditionally, technology is seen as a male-dominated field. So there are a variety of different reasons behind it. Lots of studies been done. But then that meaningful change for the next generation, for them to understand that technology can be a way to not only get into the industry you want to, but absolutely any other industry, even outside, as I said, of FS, manufacturing, law, absolutely anywhere. And the other, that's one point around the sort of bringing women in, but there's also the second point around, when people do apply for jobs, you don't have to know absolutely everything, And I think there's a general feeling that you're either in technology or you're not. You've either done a degree in technology or you're not capable or ready to do that sort of a technology job. I mean, quite frankly, for me as well, I learned most of the job actually doing my job, and I think there's got to be a recognition of that as well. We need to reinforce that brand, the opportunity that technology brings, and really move the dial on recruitment. So I think, and you do see that across the board, and I think that is something that we as an industry are doing a lot in, but obviously need to do more. I mean, the second point around change is the point that Lynne touched on, and she brought to life the stories beautifully. So I won't repeat what she'd said there, but women do want to be 100% sure that they can execute on a role before they even apply. And I think having the confidence, ignoring the imposter syndrome, and there's so much, study being done on that. It is real, yeah. But that's important, that having that confidence, really knowing what's your value out there in this very competitive market. And I mean, we offer some programs, amazing programs actually, around personal resilience, confidence, branding for women in the technology space. But I have to say, that's one of the things I had to personally understand myself, the ability to say yes to opportunities that seem to be beyond my own self-imposed barriers. But the flip side of it is a confidence to say no, and it's a really tough thing to do. So how do you actually, make that happen? And that change in women's, having that ability, having that confidence to do so. And the last point, and we as women in technology, we're not in this on our own. This isn't something that, just this panel and some people beyond that need to solve. The need for cultural change, education, advocation, amplification, it's as important as ever in all organizations. And that's the change we really need to drive.
Yeah, I think I really want to come back onto that education bit and how we bring that in. But I'm just really quickly, you talked about the getting enough women joining and the graduates in there. Any thoughts, the things that you've done to make it appear more attractive, to get more people applying?
Yeah, I mean, look, we've done a lot of work on our branding and, the brand of technology, not just for ourselves, but as I said, for the industry. I think there's also, we do a lot of stuff around the different universities and colleges and other schools to make sure that people understand what does a day in the life of a technologist actually look like. It might not be what you actually see in the movies or what you might perceive. And I think really it is about us having those conversations. So people do have a better understanding of, technology isn't just about one bit. It's not just about coding. There's a much broader spectrum of activities that go into technology. So, what's stopping us from having that conversation? And until we do, we're not going to move the dial.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. Let's bring Ricarda in. Because you've had a fantastic career, Ricarda, and showed actually how progressive women can thrive in technology. So I suppose I'm interested in how you see the landscape has changed when you first started in technology and what more can be done.
So thank you for inviting me. I'm so happy to be here. So when I started, and it's more than 30 years ago, I started to study IT in Germany, and we were 20%. Yeah, 20% women, 80% men, which was a lot, because if we looked at more other things in IT, we had most women. In more engineering areas, we had even less. And I was member of this Deutschen Ingenieurinbund, an association for engineers, and we went out to the university, we went out to the schools to really encourage more girls, women to join technology. This was 30 years ago, a very exciting phase where we all tried to push and move and get more women in. And I think we succeeded somehow, but only in some areas. So when 30 years ago, I was quite often the only woman working in the area, in the project. It was just me. Today is better. We are running in Generali a huge transformation program here in Switzerland, but we have similar projects in Spain and in Portugal, and all program managers are women. So we're 3 women working together. And also from the supply, we have amazing women. But if I look at my team, I don't have 50% women in leading positions. I have 1 woman and 9 men. So we are still all desperately looking for more women to join us, to take opportunities. The doors are wide open. Yeah, you only have to come and take the opportunity. I think everyone loves to have women in the position, in management position, going up, doing something. So there are a lot of opportunities, and we do not get enough women in. And I'm sometimes really asking myself, why is that? So this technology thing, it's not coding. Most of the time I deal with people. Technology is also people management. It's not that we do a lot of software things. We deal with people. That should be attractive for women. And I thought what we have to change. Yes.
Yeah, I was going to say, do you think that's one of the reasons? Do you think they see it as the coding side of it rather than the people side of technology?
It's working in technology for me is 80% people and 20% technology. Especially if you come to a more management position. It's all about moving people, doing things. And of course, you move with the technology, but you deal with people.
Yeah, that's a wonderful insight. Thank you. Go on, sorry, do you want to get it finished?
No, just to finish. So I say the door is open. Go through, and what we can do is, I think, make it more attractive and make job offers more attractive by giving jobs with 60%, 80%. We don't need this 100% working from 8 to 6, 5 days in the office anymore. So that is something we can do, make it more flexible to have women to be more attractive to the jobs.
Yeah, I love that. Great couple of tips already. So thank you, Ricarda. Right, let's bring our last speaker in, Sarah. Yeah, I'm really interested in your sort of personal insights and experience as a leader in the technology industry. So I suppose what changed the game for you in your career?
Thank you, Richard. Yeah, and also it's an honor for me to be here on the panel. So thanks, first of all, for that. But yeah, it's an interesting question. And when I thought about it, Richard, looking back at when I started, it may be very simple now, the answer. And you may say, okay, wow, if that was the game changer, then it may be easy for all of the women. But it was all about visibility to me. So I like the story that Lynne and the others talked about gaining credibility with experiences you make on the field, on the ground, with your clients, with your peers. But you may do the best of the work and it may not be seen by others, right? So it's really, I had certainly, you do have the headquarters, you may be located somewhere else. And that was the case for me when I started with IBM at that time. So I was not located in the headquarters. And when I moved to the headquarters, that was a game changer for me because all of a sudden I had visibility that I did not have before where I was located before. So just due to the fact that you get into conversations while going for a coffee or entering the building or waiting for an elevator, I gained visibility that I didn't have before and was able to present the good work that I'm doing, the great work I'm doing, and really get in the heads of the people when they think about organizational changes, when they think about successors for different roles. It's really interesting because certainly you may not be present, although you may be the best employee and fit for the role that they are looking for. So I think that's one of the major things that I learned and noticed. And when I look back and giving advice now to employees in my team and also mentees, for instance, it's the advice that I always give to them. Certainly now in Corona times, it's maybe even much easier when you are not located in the headquarters to still try to get visibility by asking for one-on-one get-to-knows with your boss's boss, with some management levels that you tend to be interested in or that you may want to develop in, that you just reach out to the different people. And I'm sure if they are great leaders, they will take the time to have the one-on-ones for 5 minutes to get to know you, to get the chance to pitch yourself and your story and what work you are doing. So I think that's the advice that I give today because I needed to learn that when I was going to the headquarters, and that certainly not everybody has the possibility to go to a headquarters where your company is located. So it's really the chance to reach out to people, ask your management, to get to know other managers, to network, to dare to introduce yourself to others, although you may not know what their positions are, and really believe in yourself and have confidence of the work you are doing. And shout it out to everybody that wants to hear it. So I think that's a very easy thing, but I guess that still, and I see it myself in our company and with friends even, that it's still a problem of women that they that they work for themselves, they do great work, but they don't let people know about it.
Yeah, it's a lovely point again, and I maybe connect to the point that Ricarda made in the last question. So, as we work more remotely, and there are less people potentially going into headquarters or whatever it is, maybe how not necessarily the women how they will network, but how can we all as leaders help create greater visibility for them to be able to show what great things they're doing? Yeah,
I think it's there are different techniques, right, that I also establish for my team. So first of all, as a manager, even I see it as my responsibility, as my kind of obligation to make women visible to upper management, to peers. So I will always share their successes, always share their development successes, whatever it may be in their career. I will make sure that they are seen. And I think that's the most important thing that you can do for your female employees too, right? So that you give them the platform to show themselves and their work. But there are certainly other techniques too that I've learned at IBM and that I also establish here with SAP. So just about shadowing, about mentoring and coaching. So giving them the opportunity to get into an authentic and real discussion with coaches that are in line of businesses and at certain levels that, as said, they can benefit from and one another can benefit from, right? So I think shadowing is, as said, very good because certainly, and we talked about this before here too, that we may not be as confident in believing in ourselves that we can grow into a role. And I think that's why shadowing someone that is in a position that you may be interested in is something very good, because you will see that the day may look different as you think, and that those people are just human beings too. They grow into their roles too. So you will have a much more profound way to see, okay, that's something that I actually can do in a couple of years' time, doing this and this development plan. So I think shadowing, mentoring, coaching, giving platform for women to network, I think that's all that you can do if it's established programs in your company or if you do it on your own for your teams and peer groups.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you. And some great role modeling by you there across trying to help other people. And actually, we've got another question, which I'm going to sort of lead that on to come back to Lynne. So had a question come in about actually taking from Sarah's points there. How do we actually drive better engagement from the top to drive the right change that Sarah's been talking about? Lynne, do you want to come in on that one?
Yeah, sure. So I'll talk about a few things that I've seen other companies do. And it really depends on how large your company is. I think for really large companies, what I've seen anyways, is that you could start a women's colleague network and ask your company or ask one of the senior leaders or work with HR and say, could we do something like this to get the word out and create a network? And we did this in the company that I worked in, and they actually did a survey asking women what they felt were some of the barriers. And the results, I remember hearing this and getting the results. And at that time, it was mostly male leaders that sat on the executive board. I think I was one of 2 women on the executive board. They were in shock. So it really created awareness. And I thought that was pretty super cool. And then another thing that they did is they actually had a de&i expert come from outside of the company to talk about some of the stats, Richard, you were even just showing earlier, and what a difference it could make if we had a more balanced workforce. And then every year when we finish our total compensation rewards season, they show the promotions between male and female and how we're doing. So it's important to show progress. So having HR and encouraging these types of practices in an organization, I think, are really key to start to listen to the voice of women.
Brilliant. Thank you. And so that's starting to come into actually the next section, which is great personal experiences. And now really interested in what can organizations do? And so you started with a couple of examples there on empowering progressive women to thrive in technology. So I suppose I'll stick with you, Lynne, while you're here. So I may be interested in what are the most important skills of the future that women in technology should focus on to be successful.
Okay, thank you. So I feel strongly that a lot of the same skills that we need, men need to have it all, have as well. Okay, so let me explain. Let me explain what that means. So one of the two top skills that I feel really strongly someone needs to be successful is confidence and credibility. Okay. The first one I talked about earlier. So as I mentioned before, to be successful, you really need to build a track record of success. If you say you're going to do something, do it. Then this way it kind of continues to repeat themselves, and you build a strong network of belief in yourself that you can deliver. And then by having the confidence really to say yes. And, you know, when you're being asked to take something new on or do something that, you know, you feel that you may not know how to do that well yet, just say yes and give it a go. Sometimes I think men feel more comfortable doing this just naturally. And us as a woman, and one of the other panelists said this, we want to be able to do the entire job before we can say yes. And a lot of times people have said to me, but Lynne, I don't know how. Okay, well, we'll learn. You can learn. We need to learn how to do these things. So have the confidence, take the risk, say yes. And another big skill that we need to have is communication. We need to feel confident to speak up, okay? How to sell your ideas, sell your accomplishments. And I'll give you a little bit of a story. So about 5 years into my career, I had mentioned I was given this really big project, the first big one I had in the fiduciary and claims space. And it was in a turnaround company. And the senior leaders from Chicago were coming in. They were all males coming in from the top, and I was asked to do a presentation. And the night before, oh my God, I was so nervous. I thought, I don't know. I'm just, you know, I didn't want to do that shaking thing that you do when you're speaking, and I wanted to come across very confident. And then finally I told myself, because I thought I'm not going to sleep at all tonight. I told myself, Lynne, why are you thinking these people that are coming just because they're all older men are any different than you? They have a life outside of work. They have children. They have a spouse that they probably get into fights with all the time. So, you know, it's the same thing. I went in there the next day with this mindset that they're no different than I am. They might look different than me, but they're no different than me. And I'm telling you, I rocked it. I made that presentation happen. And that's when I realized you need to feel comfortable to be yourself. And this is how you will be authentic and show your best self. So the last area I would say is a strong focus on people leadership. You cannot be successful without surrounding yourself with an amazing team. You need to learn how to win the hearts and minds and souls of the people and bring them along the journey with you, because obviously having a team around you is super important.
Yeah, no, some great points there, and I think fascinating for me as a man sitting here to listen and go, right, okay, how do I help support people in those kind of situations, and make sure that you feel confident, as you said, to say yes, and you feel confident to be able to take things forward and move forward. I've just got a question actually that's come through, so while you're here, just to carry on, one question about males not wanting to report into females. Have you encountered the same challenges, and how have you coped in there?
Okay, it's so funny you say this, because when I got to Europe two years ago, all of my direct reports were male. So I hope they feel comfortable and they're okay working for me. So since
maybe
then,
they're listening in and can put the question in.
So I have started to diversify and started to bring more women leaders on. I think at first when I started leading a lot of men, it was even me who had to feel confident that they were going to listen to what I had to say. You know, so some of it goes both ways. You know, I haven't overtly felt that anyone had an issue that I can remember. Maybe when I was really young, someone did, but I thought it was more of an age thing, maybe not a woman thing. But, you know, maybe at times people have. But again, I would tell a woman, and that's not your issue. You know, like you need to feel confident that it doesn't matter, woman or male, we need to work together.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks, Lynne. Well, let's bring Kanika in and maybe start with that question. So I don't know if you've had similar scenarios. Equally, the other part of the question was the person that's just asked that she feels she has to work twice as hard as male colleagues to prove herself. Have you seen that or come across that?
Yeah, I mean, look, the short answer to both questions is yes, right? You know, very similar a situation with what Lynne described. You know, initially, as you're coming up through the ranks, there is a bit of hesitation when people, you know, when men report into you, I guess, and some of it might be cultural, some of it is, you know, bias, unconscious. You know, I don't think it's a conscious bias in any way, shape, or form, but you know, you do, of course, you do have that. I mean, women working twice as hard is an interesting concept. You know, if you start looking at the barriers within any organizational structure that women would face, I think, you know, it's sad but true. I mean, the barriers do exist, yeah. If it wasn't the case, then, you know, we wouldn't be here, right? And the numbers speak for themselves, the studies speak for themselves. There are obvious things that, you know, we need to do as an industry to lift some of those barriers which result in, you know, women working twice as hard, or having that cultural sort of, you know, shift where being male or female just becomes irrelevant to any conversation. And I'm, you know, hugely passionate about it reaching to that point. So, you know, I think that let's talk about those barriers, right? Let's not shy away from it. They are there. And, you know, and based on my experience in the financial services industry, we do a lot of work through our women in technology networks as well. And one of the things I see all the time is you know, the tone from the top is there. Yeah, the words are there. The initiative is extremely strong, but sadly, the reality is on the ground the barriers do exist. So something's disconnected over there, right? We need to have open and honest conversations about that. Because I think you know, to answer your question specifically there, Richard, it's the point is that because of these barriers, these things happen, yeah. Okay. And they manifest themselves into these sorts of actions. So, you know, what do we, you know, I'll give you examples of these barriers. So, one example is sponsorships and networking. I mean, networking is seen as a bad word, you know, in certain with certain people, and it's not seen as a positive thing to do. But my question around the sponsorship networks, allies, etc., is, do we really have equal access? Yeah. And typically, and I don't want to stereotype, you know, as always, but the studies again speak for themselves. Women don't like to advocate about themselves. They don't like to shout about what we do. You know, we sort of shy away from the branding, the networking, etc. So how do you move the dial on that? How do you actually bring sponsorship and networking, etc., equal, you know, and equal and beyond? What are the tools that we can use as an industry to help improve that? And similarly, what about the lived experience? You know, do we have the same lived experiences as men do? Of course we don't, you know, in our working life. So what are we doing to advocate that, to make sure that people understand the lived experiences are different, and they don't have to be the same? Yeah, I mean, there's no reason for us to all conform into a mold of some sort. So how do we actually make that people aware that lived experiences are different? And then things like unconscious bias, microaggressions, I mean, they exist. Of course they exist. And, you know, what are we doing as an industry to address this around, you know, knowledge, comms, commitment, etc.? And it's when we actually address the fundamental barriers is when we will actually get to the bottom of moving away those types of issues coming up repeatedly. And again, that's my personal view based on my experience. But there's still a lot to do in this space, yeah.
Yeah, and I think both you and Lynne have just shared some incredible stories that hopefully help with that process, that people hear the stories and go, okay, so there's some great examples, and not only helping people feel okay, but also raising awareness to males as well, making us think, right, we need to be aware of these points, right? So the biases that are potentially unconscious that you just talked about, we need to make them very conscious, and therefore we are more likely to do something about it.
I mean, people always talk about unconscious bias, and the bottom line is, people ask me, does it exist? I mean, of course it exists, right? We all have unconscious biases. The important thing around that is to understand what they are, be open to it, be aware of what, I mean, by definition itself, right, it's unconscious. You're not going to know about it. So how do you actually figure out, what they are, what they might be, and then of course people want to address it, and having the right mechanisms to allow people to address it is important. But as I said at the start, it's all about having those open, honest conversations, and this is a great initiative to start those conversations.
Thank you. Maybe let's bring Ricarda in then. Again, thinking about sort of organizational, but also maybe cultural. So I'm interested in sort of cultural differences that have impacted your views on progression for women in technology.
Yes. So when I worked, of course, in Germany, Switzerland, and all these countries, which for me is easy, but then I moved to Asia, worked in China, had to lead a Chinese team of developers. I worked in Japan doing software development here, and I worked in some months also in Malaysia. It is in some contexts more difficult, especially, for example, in Japan for women in technology, it is extremely difficult. But in all these cultures, you can drive forward, you can do something, but it's most important that you actively do it and find male supporters as well. We women normally, we like to network with other women. This is good, but what is working very well if you have a male supporter or your male peers. So when I was reading this, I have to work twice as hard as my male peers. No, you shouldn't do that. Your male peers should be on the same level and say, you are in our team. You're one of us. And every time they go out and talk to someone, they must show that you are on the equal level. So it's especially in these cultures very important to find peers who support you, to find people on the same level, in the same culture, who demonstrate that you can do that. And from outside as a leader, especially if you are working in international teams, you can be role models, you can promote that, you can talk to the male leaders to do these models. That is working from my experience.
And so if you find those peers, role models, allies, what do you want them to do? What are we asking them to do that's going to help women progress in technology?
So first of all, and make that visible. This is my colleague Ricarda. She's on the same level. Hi, Ricarda. She's doing that. I'm doing that. No difference. Make women visible as normal people. Not, oh, this is our special women. Now we have also one of them exotic animals in our zoo. No, it's normal. It's good. And make that visible. And we want to have more like Ricarda, that it's good to have different people in the teams and make that visible, this strong connection also to the male. We are not women alone, we are one team. I always had great peers, male supporter, great male bosses who were supporting my career always. And that helped me tremendously.
Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, I love the openness as well. Brilliant. Sarah, I'm just going to come to you. Just your suggestions then. How do we better support women in technology to be successful?
Yeah, I think I touched on a few, right, with programs like mentoring or shadowing, and also as said, right, if you, and I know that there are still many companies that don't offer mentorships or mentoring programs, but there is nobody that holds you back to ask for a mentor, right? And I think that's, you said it perfectly just now, that there can be role models, male role models too. And as you just said, I had male mentors that are still my mentors from IBM times, that are leading IBM globally by now, and we still are in contact. They're still kind of coaching me on different advices. And also when I read the questions here on that male employees are not listening to you or are even rejecting to take any order or whatever, I think that's something that will always help you to have the right mentors that you can talk to in a very trustful environment, right? So as soon as you want to start a career, or as soon as you enter a company, look for a mentor, look for a coach, and really establish that relation, make use of it, because always when you come up with challenges like this, and I've luckily never experienced any challenges like this, and I had teams that also were starting with just male employees, and I had to make them more diverse, but I've never experienced it, but I'm sure there are so many women out there that experience it, that don't have the right support with their direct management too, maybe even. So therefore, the mentor is even more important, because you can, in a trustful environment, talk about those different things with them and about those challenges and how he or she would have coped with it. And I always had male mentors that helped me a lot. It does not always need to be a woman, right? I mean, we are living in our private life with men too. We have great conversations with them. So we should do that in our professional lives too, and not be shy about it, because they have similar challenges. They may have different challenges, but they certainly want to make more use of diverse teams, as you've presented, Richard, in the beginning, because there is more powerful impact to an organization. And certainly, yes, if I've experienced at IBM, certainly also too, that we've got female role models, even, and I say even, right, women that have families, that have children. They presented themselves, they talked about their career path, about their decisions that they've made throughout their career, and that have helped them to cope with different things. So that was certainly always very good to see, and helped that there is a chance to do both, to have a family one day and to do the career. And I think that helped a lot of women around where we had this network. And that's why I always say we should establish more networking in between women. So just women networks, because it may be a more trustful environment for women to speak up in the first place. But I also like one comment from one of the panelists too, that we should also have the discussion with our male colleagues, and we should have more networking events, networking possibilities with with talented males and talented females, putting them together, because also that will kind of erase any stereotypes that we still may have in our heads, that will erase or minimize any barriers that we may feel, because we more closely work together and get into this exchange and learn, hey, there's so many things that different people can bring to the table, and that we can be more powerful all together, that there are no barriers anymore. And that's certainly that I experienced that, luckily. And that's something I would hope that every organization thinks about, those roundtables, networking events, about those opportunities for people to exchange on their challenges overall, and give them training opportunities, enablement sessions with external partners, how to handle difficult conversations with employees that may struggle to follow your vision and guidance. So yeah, I think there's so many things, Richard, that can be done. So could go on for an hour probably.
One of the things I picked up on from a couple of you actually, that actually the fact that we're having more of the conversation about it. Yeah, you mentioned there actually that we need to have great conversations, great discussions, that we know it's a challenge, we know it's an issue, and we're actually trying to be more aware and do something about it. That sounds as though that's a good progressive movement. Okay, let's before we finish, I'm really interested, because we've actually had a question asking about what would be your tips for women starting their career in technology and not necessarily having those role models that exist. So sort of answering that question, but also just to finish with, what would be your top tip to empower progressive women in to thrive in technology. So I'll come back to you, Lynne, first. So firstly, if there's anything specific about role models, but also what will be your top tip?
So the first thing I would say around role models is if there's no role model in the company that you work for, like a woman role model, be a trailblazer. Find another role model, even if it's a male one, but someone who's progressive in their thinking, someone that you feel that could give you the coaching and mentoring that you think you can that you need, or a platform to stand on, so that you can be more recognized. Don't wait if there's no woman. Take that onto your own self. And then the top tip I would give is clearly have the confidence and the courage to say yes, and to learn as much as you can and get involved.
Wonderful. Thank you. Kanika, can I come to you? What would be your top tip? How do we create an empowering culture to support progressive women?
Sure. So, just to pick up on a couple of things that Lynne talked about, the role model.
Yeah, of course.
But so I remember when I started my career, and I had voiced my concern that there weren't any role models around, and I mentioned that to somebody very senior in the organisation I was with, and she turned around to me and said, "Why would you actually put all your requirements, your entire career, behind one person?" Yeah. You're much bigger and better than that, Kanika. You need to be looking at lots of different types of role models. You can have role models that you learn from. You can have role models who you look at and you think, what, I would deal with that situation in that way. And there are also role models you learn from that you think, I never want to be that person as well. They're all role models in effect, because you can take lots of different lessons you can learn and from different people, and it's when we stop learning, is when your career typically doesn't tend to go very far very quickly. So it is just constantly having that curiosity, I think, is more important than having one person who you actually put all your eggs into that one basket and think, I want to be exactly that person. So just be mindful of that. I found that really helpful in my career. The other point, again, Lynne said, say yes to opportunities. Absolutely, have the confidence to. But as I said at the start, please learn how to say no as well. Yeah. We typically, women, again, I want to be careful with stereotypes, but we tend to want to help people. We tend to say yes to things across the board. And, the art of saying no is also something we should actually spend some time thinking about. How do you do it? How do you say it? How do you not carry that guilt around after you actually say no? But you need to prioritize yourself. It's got to be the opportunities that come your way have got to be aligned with your own agenda as well, right, Lynne? So it's learn to say yes, but learn to say no. And I personally found learning to say no a lot harder than learning to say yes. Sorry, that was 2 tips as opposed to 1.
Thanks for that, Kanika. I think we've got a bit of a technical issue for Richard, so let me pick up for him while hopefully he can rejoin. So appreciate those insights, Kanika. Sarah, could I come to you next for your top tip?
Yeah, sure, Nina. So it's quite easy. Jump in at the deep end, right? So that's the brave statement I want to give. So similar, have the confidence that you can grow on the job. And the second, maybe even, as I said in the beginning, as I felt the obligation to help other women beyond my own team, it's not a one-way street. So I would really call for help women to help other women to help your female peers and colleagues. And it's a two-way street, right? So we get stronger when we help one another, and always give the right feedback to them and the advice that you feel is will help them in their career.
Brilliant, thank you, Sarah. Really insightful, and there's a few points that I've heard so far during the whole of the webcast that I'm thinking about what I should be doing, especially around that role model point as well. So appreciate that. Last but not least, Ricarda, can I come to you for your top tip for the audience?
Yeah, I can repeat what everyone said, just try, just do it. But also ask for things you want to have. So if you say, this job would be good for me, but 100% I cannot work with the children, then ask for 60%. Say I can do it 60%. Make proposals, try to shape it to your needs, and then give a try. And if it's not working, what can you lose? You don't lose anything. You'll make the next try. So don't be afraid to ask for what you want, and don't be afraid of failures, and just do it. Go ahead, try it out. And most of the time, I think you will have success, and sometimes you fail, and then you learn from it, stand up and start again. It's not an issue to do that. An issue is if you don't move, if you don't do anything, and if you don't ask for your rights.
Thank you, Ricarda. Before I close out, I just wanted to say to the panel, are there any other points that you feel that you haven't had the opportunity to share on today's call that you would like to? So I'll just pause a moment if there is anything anyone would like to add. I take silence as that you have all shared all of your knowledge on today's call, and from looking at some of the comments coming in, people have found this very valuable. They have resonated with a number of the comments as well, so appreciate that. So firstly, a big thank you to our panel, Lynne, Lisa, Ricarda and Kanika, for a fantastic discussion. The replay will also be shared out to individuals over the next couple of days. So if you were on today's call and you think that there's some interesting points that some of your colleagues or friends or even children would benefit for, then please do share. We will also be producing an illustration from today's conversation that pulls out some of the key top tips shared by the team. That will be on LinkedIn, so please watch out from our speakers, myself, Nina Driscoll and Richard Parker, so that can also be used for your conversations. We are really keen to keep this dialogue going, and we'll be looking to run our next webcast in September. We will have a short feedback form that comes up at the end, and I guess keen to get feedback on the discussion, but importantly, what are some of the topics you would like us to address in the future? So I think we're going to end there. Richard sends a big apologies. He got kicked out and couldn't get back in. So sorry for the slight difference on wrap up. But again, thank you to all of those that attended and our panel members.